Hi, everyone. I'm Betty, and I am with the George Lucas Educational Foundation. Edutopia is the website for our foundation. And I'm just learning this technology. Let's see if it's going to work. Da-da-da. Not yet. Ooh, there I am. There's me. I'm the Director of Programming and Innovation there, so I tend to corral in all the writers and oversee the content on the website. And then I also work with innovation, both internally and then with educators who are working to innovate as well. And when I was in school, I don't know where I'm supposed to point this. Oh my God, where do I point this?
That one.
Oh, user error. Okay, there we go. I just don't know where I'm supposed to point it. I'm not going to point it at the screen. Dano? Where do I, excuse me, where do I point it?
You just point it.
It's not pointing. Ta-da! There, oh, there I am. Welcome to Maker Faire. I'm learning how to make this. So anyway, when I was in school in the 70s and 80s, our classrooms didn't really look that much different than this, sadly enough. We had teachers who were standing in the front of the room, kids sitting dutifully at their desks, writing down the facts that the teacher was imparting to them, and then we were going to regurgitate it on the test. And that was the model that was introduced in the 19th century, and that was a great model for its day. We had a new public education system. It was going to help our populace become educated in the world, and that was great. But we were farmers, mostly, and early industrialists, so the 3 R's that we got in that kind of education was awesome back then, but not so much today. Even summers, the whole educational system was designed with summer to be off so that the kids could go work in the fields. But today, when the average first world teenager has more information in her pocket than all of the 19th century libraries combined, well, we have some new challenges. We simply must redesign our educational system. We need kids who have completely different skills than our education system has offered them. We need kids who can think dynamically and critically and creatively. We need kids who can collaborate together and share ideas and share their thoughts. We need kids who can fail hard and fail forward and get up and brush themselves off and get on with it. In short, we need more makers, which is where you guys come in. So we know that education typically has a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of silver bullets in education. We always hear about how the next big thing, it's going to be charter schools, or it's going to be block scheduling. It comes all the time. So my question to myself when I give this presentation is, well, how do we know that making isn't just another educational buzzword that's going to die off in another few years? Well, that's where we turn to the research. And my colleagues at Edutopia spend a lot of time working with educators who are implementing project-based learning into their curriculum. And project-based learning is like a superset of making. It involves the following: realistic problems, authentic problems. Instead of the teacher telling the kid what to learn, the kid is learning something that has reality in his life or her life. Student has control over his or her learning. Instead of reading the book and digesting it and spitting it back, the kid has inquiry. They're curious. What is this going to do? How can I change? What happens when I tweak this or that? The teacher, instead of being up front, is facilitating this. It's the guide on the side, helping to create scaffolding and help build those questions so that the kids are motivated that much more to learn more. And finally, kids are collaborators. They're not sitting in their own little silos, heads down. They're working together. All really important, fantastic 21st century skills. So why is this interesting? Well, this is why it's interesting. The research says, according to a paper by Johannes Strobel and Angela van Barneveld in 2009, they analyzed over 250 studies, and they found that when implemented well, and that's an important condition here, when implemented well, project-based learning can increase long-term retention of content. It can improve problem-solving and collaboration skills. Well, that's not surprising, right? Project-based learning is problem-solving and collaboration skills. But these are skills we really need. It improves their attitude towards learning. Kids like it. Guess what? It's fun, and they want to do more. And finally, ironically enough, kids who do project-based learning perform the same as or better than kids with traditional instruction on standardized tests. So all the drill and kill in the world is still not doing as well as project-based learning can. Furthermore, we can take a tip from our friends in neuroscience. The brain loves to be engaged. It loves to have what neurologists call achievable challenge, right? Video games, the leveling up. It's a scaffolded designed experience so that when your brain is just hooked into that, and guess what? Games are addictive. Learning can be addictive as well when we structure it to have these kinds of achievable challenges. And when that happens, the brain is flooded with a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine fuels the brain's reward center. And the brain loves that, so that's what makes it so much more addictive. So, how do we create these learning experiences, this learning crack? How do we get our kids hooked on it? Well, I wanted to share with you today some models so that these can be replicated, they can be tweaked, they can be redesigned, but just some models for what some people are doing now out in the real world with kids and making. And starting with the most basic is the friends and family model. And many of you are probably already doing something like this. This is the makerspace in your garage where you have kids over and you collaborate together and it's fun and it's informal, or maybe more formal. You get stuff off of Instructables or Make or wherever, and there's tons of resources out there. So let's meet a kid who is in this. I don't know if this video is going to work because I'm way out here and this isn't going to work. So anyway, I'll just tell you about Quinn. Quinn he went to the Maker Faire in DC, in the White House Maker Faire, and he has a posse of kids that he works with in his garage, and he's teaching them all how to do like 3D printing and making keychains and making iPhone cases, and the kids are learning from one another. And that's what's so incredibly powerful about making in this kind of context is that the kids are not just having agency over their own learning, but agency over one another. And of course, they're properly scaffolded by adults who know what they're doing. It's not just kids go in the park and have fun. It's real collaboration between kids and the adults in their lives. So to take the step up a game, to take your game up a step, you can, instead of taking it from your own house, you can expand it into a more community model. And that's what this space is. Mount Elliott is a makerspace out of eastern Detroit. And the founder, Jeff Sturgis, got a grant to create a space. He had a vision to create a space in a low-income, disadvantaged neighborhood, so he went to eastern Detroit. And he set up a space in the basement of a church. And in so doing, he was able to create community there at the church and then engage with the kids who were already part of the church. So he had an instant community of kids to work with. He then went and hired teachers, and instead of spending his grant on fancy laser cutters, he spent it on X-Acto knives and scissors and teacher development, so that the teachers could then teach one another, who would then teach the kids how to teach one another. And the kids would then become aspirational models for each other. And that is what happened. Let's see if it's in here. Oh, there he is. Dwight. Dwight came to the space early on when they just opened, and he was a musician and had written some songs, and he was curious about recording some of the music. He'd heard that there had been computers there and thought, I'd like to, see if he could make a record. So he comes to the space, and Jeff, the founder, says, oh, I'm busy, but here you go. Here's a computer. It's got GarageBand on it. And Dwight's like, okay, and he gets down. He starts figuring it out, gets on YouTube, finds some tutorials. He's completely engaged in it. And before he knows it, in a month's time, Dwight has recorded a full-on album. Do they call them album anymore? No, it's record. Showing my age there. Anyway, so he made a full record, though, like in a month. And then he took the record to the local Hard Rock Cafe, where they have an open mic night. And he performed his music there, and he ended up winning. And not only did he win, but he lost her video. He won. Not only did he win, but he took home $5,000. So here's a kid who had, by his own admission, been kind of a troublemaker before, wasn't really directed in his life, and he found his passion through music and was able to share it not just with his friends, but then he was sharing it with his larger community as well. And I'm really not sure what's going on with my slides. We interrupt this show for a technical failure once again. excuse me. Oh, there I am. Oh, yay. I didn't want to have to go back. Digital Harbor, there's another one. Digital Harbor, that's where we were. So Digital Harbor is another one that is experimenting with a model. So the Mount Elliott model was, he founded it with grants mostly, but he was experimenting with empowering the kids to have entrepreneurial skills so that they could then go into the community, sell those skills, earn money, and then bring it back and do a revenue share. And that is what Digital Harbor has founded their whole model on, is really helping kids get these entrepreneurial skills like web development and app development and 3D printing. And these kids are actively going out in the community and selling their wares in the form of their skills and bringing it back to the space. Their space was started in an old rec center, which they reimagined as a tech center. So there was just this found opportunity. There was a lot of these rec centers in the city of Baltimore, where this is, were closed down. And they thought, well, why don't we just start a space there? So that's awesome. We could do a little duet. So that was the community model, where you're partnering with another space and expanding through their community. The next model I want to share with you is the summer camp model, and where the community model, all the folks that I know who do that model really like it because they have the kids from 3 to 6, and that is kind of the witching hour when kind of curious kids get involved in curious troubles. The Galileo model, the summer camp model, is one where they have the kids all day, but you get them for like a week or two at a throw. So you get it's a different experience. And I throw that out there in case you're interested in doing these, because it's pretty different when you're developing curriculum for them. But what I loved about Galileo is that Galileo has really helped redefine our relationship to failure. And I know as makers, many of us know these things, that failing is an important part of the process. Educators, not so much. Educators tend to look at tests and grades, and of course our model of high stakes testing really creates this failure paradigm that some of these organizations are helping to combat, and that's what I really wanted to share with you about Galileo. They were based on the Stanford D School, the Hasso-Plattner School of Design. They have a model of design thinking, which helps you think about in terms of you create something, you test it, you refine it, you test it again, you redesign it. So rather than looking at a project as a failure, if it doesn't work, it's an opportunity to redesign it. So the other thing that they do, which is also very masterful, is they help kids with their sense of mindset, how they think about themselves. And now they're working with little kids. These are pre-K to like 8th grade. And so these little kids, these little kindergartners are running around and talking about these ideas of mindset. I am visionary. I am collaborative. I am courageous. I am determined, and I am reflective. And there's something really powerful about seeing these little kids running around talking about reflective and their mistakes and how they made a marvelous mistake. It wasn't just a mistake, it was marvelous. And they're really proud of it. And not only are they really proud of it, they get a little bracelet when they've made a mistake and reflected, and they're proud of that too. So it's just a really simple way that we as parents, educators, kids can think about mistakes in a different light. So now let's turn to the in-school model. All of those were out of school, and they could be done in partnership with the school, but most of them are done out of school. Lighthouse Community Charter is a charter school in Oakland, California, and they started their maker program about 4 years ago when Aaron Vanderwerf, who's a robotics teacher at the time, had come to a maker fair and he was totally sold. Like, this is the future of education. And so he built in some making programs into his robotics. Kids loved it, expanded it to math, expanded it to an elective. Kids were still just knocking down the doors to come to this thing. So they thought they got a grant from the state of California to expand it from high school to K to 12. So now they're in this incredible opportunity of creating K to 12 curriculum across the entire school. So this is a senior project at the top there. These are kids who are building a wind turbine. And the thinking here was that people, humans on this planet in this time need to understand how energy works, how we get it, how we save it, how we use it, how we conserve it, and so forth. So rather than, again, read about it in a book or even go visit a wind center, they ended up making their own. And so these kids now have an intrinsic understanding of how energy and power work and can go to any other energy and really understand what the mechanisms are, any other energy source. This is a robotics class. This is an early class, and the wind turbines were more of a structured plan where the kids actually got kits and they got to make them on their own. This one is more free form, so they can kind of play with whatever. And there you can do both models, and they have different reasons. You'd want to do the more structured one for like a complicated project or something that was a little bit more like skill building. And this is interesting because one of Erin's visions is to create curriculum that is not just STEM, but also more in social studies and English and so forth. And this is a unit on the Transcontinental Railroad. So they had the kids break up into two groups, the East Coast and the West Coast. And they had to build their railroads out in the yard. So in addition to learning all about Leland Stanford and how the railroad came about and all that history, they were challenged with creating a railroad that would go over a tabletop, right? And then it would come down and then it would go over this long thing and then it would go over these other mountains, but they were coming at one another. So the East Coast is looking at the West Coast going, ha, we got this one, and the West Coast is looking at these Rocky Mountains going, holy crap. But that was the real, that was a real, a real world situation that was going on when that was being built. So Park Day is another school that has a school-wide implementation, and full disclosure, my daughter goes here. Park Day has they've been a project-based school for many, many years, but have really upped their game recently with making. And they are now in a partnership and a collaboration with Harvard's Project Zero to help develop curricula around how to make making work in the classroom for students. So they're doing a lot of research on best practices with Park Day and a consortium of 5 other schools in the East Bay in California. One of their main events throughout the year is this mini maker fair, where they bring in everybody from the community, everybody, parents, teachers, kids, neighbors, everybody has to work on it. And they organize this huge community-wide event. And in addition, they're inviting local teachers to come and do professional development there too. So there's a check-in on how is it working and what projects resonate and how could we customize this for our budgets and our communities and so forth. Here's the picture of the Mini Maker Fair here. That is a racetrack that's set up at the top of a slide, and the kids made their own carts, and it's a race to see how fast, who can make the fastest cart. The Maker Fair, Mini Maker Fair is also a fundraiser for the school. So this is another way of having a sustainable model. So those were some school-wide implementations. These are some district-wide integrations of making. And this is Elizabeth Forward, which is a district just south of Pittsburgh. And they have some visionary leadership, Bart Rocco and Ted Karuskin, who wanted to implement making from the get-go. So they had started with a $1,500 3D printer before they had anything. They just bought this one printer. And they showed it to different educators in the building. And different educators were like, oh, well, I could use that for blah, and I could use that for so forth. And he built a little coalition. And then they took that coalition to a tech shop where their brains were blown open. They were completely impressed by all of the learning that happens in these environments, which we all sort of know, but they didn't, and so they saw it. Meanwhile, they were busy building out partnerships with local organizations. Specifically, one in particular was Carnegie Mellon. And the Carnegie Mellon partnership afforded them the ability to get professional development for their teachers. So the Carnegie Mellon students would mentor the Elizabeth Forward teachers for free. And then so these teachers got this cutting-edge professional development on how to create technology experiences for kids and integrated with curriculum. The Carnegie kids also consulted on some of the spaces. So they were able to see and help them vision new spaces. This, for example, is their library renovation. They have a library now that has a recording studio, a video production studio, computer science, in addition to an entertainment technology lab where they're doing college-level work in programming video games. So these kids are going, and you can see some videos on their site, which I'll have a link for you, of these kids who were previously like, oh yeah, I made it through the day at school, and now these kids are like up in the morning, not failing, like they're getting A's, and they're just really excited to be there. So and they also, one of the ways that they cut costs to afford this was that they killed their textbooks and went to a one-to-one iPad. So every kid gets an iPad. They don't have books anymore. And so they use the money to rent iPads instead of buy them so that they could test it out and make sure that it worked. So it was a really good, sustainable model to bring something that big. And my videos aren't working, so I will go on to my last case study. This is Albemarle. This is a school in Virginia. It's a district in Virginia. They have 26 schools. And under the leadership of Pan Moran and Ira Sokol, they have done some incredible work bringing this very large, very diverse district into a full-on making program. They have been working with, let me check this. I just got these notes today, so I wanted to make sure I'm correct here. Oh, they have 12 learning competencies that they have built around their kids. So they're things like the things we talked about earlier, critical thinking and collaboration. But they also have physical education and ethics. So they're really working to create well-rounded kids who have a real sense of purpose in the world and why they're doing what they're doing. They've developed some really innovative ideas too. Like for example, this image that we're seeing here is a 9th grade English class, and they were studying the hero's journey. You know, the Joseph Campbell thing with the call to the adventure, it's Star Wars. Well, the hero's journey was translated into a Rube Goldberg machine. So the kids had to understand the hero's journey, and then they had to make a machine, or a Rube Goldberg machine that sort of carried that experience through. So the marble at the top, it's in an ordinary world, and then it gets the call to adventure, it falls down a thing, and so each group of kids had to create one of these wonderful Rube Goldberg machines, and you can see some of these videos on their website. They're quite extraordinary. And they also had a summer program in one of their elementary schools that was a maker program. But a number of the educators there were concerned that some of the kids would not be able to participate because they lived in the barrio and they weren't likely to be going to this school. So these educators organized a pop-up maker summer camp where they borrowed a trailer, a giant trailer, filled it with maker gear, and brought it to this neighborhood. And so that these kids had access to these incredible maker projects. They made these ROVs that were flying around. These two kids are in middle school. They're making their ROV work. They got really excited about it and really engaged from the beginning of the day till the end of the day. They just didn't leave this place. But the interesting thing is that the moms also got engaged. And so the moms would come and they kind of like, wait, what's going on over there? And they saw they had sewing machines and hot glue guns. So these moms started to become also makers in their own creative way. So when school started, the kids went back to making at school because it's a maker district. So they brought all their newfound maker skills. And the grown-ups went off and started a business consortium where they're selling their handbags and their tablecloths and all of their clothing. So it works for everyone. So that's awesome. We love making. We all know that. You guys are the choir. What do we do now, right? How do we make this something real? And so these 5 steps are steps that, as people who make, we probably will recognize these steps. To create a maker program, you're going to have to kind of be a maker about it. But the first one is start small. All of the stories up there, all of the educators I've ever talked to about this, start small. Making is organic, we know that. And policy and education reform is not. So start with the, I love it, it's interesting and it's helpful sometimes, but really the grassroots is where the momentum is. So start small, start with popsicle sticks, in a storage closet. Use your network. Every single one of these groups uses their network, and all of us do. We're on the internet, You can't help it now, but you can be really strategic about it and getting money and finding out who has equipment that you can share. There's a makerspace in Toronto that's working with schools it's called Maker Kids, and what they're doing is they're trying out a model where the kids are coming to them just for like once a month or once a week, and so the school can just use that space instead of having to develop their own. These kinds of networks are so powerful and really helpful. Use existing resources, storage closets, computers that aren't being used. FreeCycle is a great resource. There's so many places to find existing resources, and these are how these maker programs can really get additional lift. And of course, by the way, making is cool when you use something random off of recycle. So that actually is, and another idea that I thought was really interesting was a lot of schools now will be having computers in them for standardized testing for the Common Core. And so there's going to be all these computers in schools now. So let's take them just out of the realm of assessment and bring them into some making spaces. They're going to be there. We might as well use them for that too. Empower students to speak. Quinn, who we met at the beginning, he went to his superintendent with the help of some of his teachers and his parents, and he said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're making this amazing stuff, and how come school doesn't look like this? And the superintendent went, wow, you're an amazing kid, and you guys are incredible, you're right. So kids' voices are really powerful, and we should help them use them, because those will make a difference as well. And last but not least, don't wait. Making, if anything, is about prototyping, putting it out there, trying it out, seeing if it works or doesn't work or the screen dies. There it is. So don't wait. There's no reason to wait. We can always iterate on it later. And so that is it. My name is Betty, and I'm at Edutopia Betty on Twitter. You are welcome to come and find me after. I'd be happy to chat with you more about this, and I will be placing more of these resources on edutopia.org for you to find later if you want them. Thank you so much.